In a world where adventurers were revered and levels determined one's worth, Ye Qing was at the bottom of the hierarchy, level 0, a mere abyss picker. His days were spent scavenging in dungeons, gathering scraps left behind by more skilled adventurers. It was a thankless job, but one that kept him alive in a society that valued strength above all else. One day, Ye Qing found himself in unfamiliar territory, a B-rank dungeon. It was his first time in such a dangerous place, and he felt the weight of his inadequacy. Armed with a battered weapon, he encountered a formidable B-rank monster. Try as he might, his attacks barely scratched the creature. He was outmatched and overwhelmed, struggling to survive. However, beneath the scornful gaze of his peers, Ye Qing harbored an indomitable spirit. With sheer determination, he landed a blow on the monster, dealing a paltry but significant damage. To understand how Ye Qing ended up in this predicament, we must rewind to his daily life. As an abyss picker, he sorted through loot from dungeon expeditions, ensuring every piece was accounted for. Failure meant severe consequences, including imprisonment, a risk he couldn't afford with his mounting debts. Years of this mundane existence were punctuated by a staggering debt of 670,000 yuan looming over him. Every day, he toiled with the sole purpose of paying off this debt, exacerbated by the exorbitant medical bills for his gravely ill sister. She needed urgent medical treatment he couldn't afford, adding urgency to his quest for money. When a lucrative job offer promising 3,000 yuan came his way, he couldn't refuse despite the danger. The money was crucial not just for himself, but to save his sister's life. Entering the B-rank dungeon with a group of seasoned adventurers, Ye Qing hoped for acceptance and camaraderie. Instead, he was met with scorn and condescension. The elite hunters made it clear he was a burden, warning him to stay out of their way if he valued his life. During their journey, Ye Qing accidentally bumps into one of the hunters, causing them to lash out at him. Despite apologizing, he's treated with disdain and left behind by the group. Unbeknownst to them, every hardship and insult fuels his determination. As he continues in the dungeon, barely surviving encounters, Ye Qing roams the dungeon hoping to earn enough experience to level up from 0 to 1. This milestone raises questions. Will this newfound strength from leveling up from 0 to 1 change his fate? Or will he remain the same weakling in the eyes of others? After hours of relentless exploration and combat, the dungeon's echoing halls finally quieted as Ye Qing and his fellow hunters gathered around the fallen monsters. They began the arduous task of collecting materials vital for their trade. Suddenly, a monster appeared before them, having evaded the other hunters. Instinctively, Ye Qing reached for a nearby staff and shield, relics of past battles lying amidst the dungeon's debris. His colleagues, gripped by fear, hesitated before fleeing, leaving Ye Qing alone to face the advancing beast. With nowhere to retreat and adrenaline coursing through his veins, Ye Qing steadied himself, eyes fixed on the creature's approaching silhouette. In the tense moments that followed, Ye Qing's mind raced. He knew his current level was insufficient to inflict any meaningful harm on such a formidable foe. Yet, instead of succumbing to fear or fleeing in futility, he saw an opportunity, a chance to transcend his limitations and advance to the next level of his abilities. With a resolute breath, Ye Qing swung the staff with all his might, aiming for the monster's vulnerable points. Despite his efforts, the blows landed weakly against the creature's hardened carapace, barely causing a ripple. His colleagues, watching from a distance, shouted warnings, urging him to retreat. They knew, as did Ye Qing himself, that his strength was inadequate to breach even the weakest monster's defenses. But rather than retreat, he saw this as his chance to level up, needing just one more point. Though his strike with the staff was futile against the monster's defenses, Ye Qing knew he had to persevere to grow stronger. Meanwhile, in a separate chamber of the dungeon, the other hunters busied themselves with collecting valuable spoils. As they were collecting the materials, they were also exchanged mocking remarks, dismissing Ye Qing and his colleagues as inept scavengers unworthy of the guild's acclaim. Suddenly, the ceiling collapsed, and Ye Qing plummeted with the monster clinging to him. In that heart-stopping moment, Ye Qing summoned every ounce of strength and resolve. Determined not to perish as a mere footnote in the annals of dungeon lore, he unleashed a primal scream, a declaration of defiance against fate's cruel hand. As he fell, Ye Qing's trembling hands found the staff's grip once more. With a desperate surge of energy, he directed its splintered end toward the creature's unblinking eye. The blow struck true, a precise strike born of sheer willpower. A critical hit, exactly the catalyst needed to propel Ye Qing from the barren fields of level 0 to the promising foothills of level 1. As Ye Qing celebrated his victory, it was, however, proved short-lived as a fellow hunter approached, his smirk laden with derision. The hunter was deriding him for defeating a low-level monster. However, a screen appeared before Ye Qing, presenting numerous job options to enhance his strength. It explained how even a level 0 member could change jobs upon reaching level 1, though gaining experience was a daunting task. Despite the hunter's mockery ringing in his ears, Ye Qing knew the true significance of this moment. For years, he had braved the dungeon's perils, risking life and limb to amass the precious experience points needed for advancement. This opportunity was not merely a chance to change jobs but a testament to his perseverance and unwavering resolve. With a mixture of trepidation and hope, Ye Qing selected the role of Scavenger, a title that, though modest, promised unique abilities and untapped potential. Yet, as he contemplated the implications of his decision, doubt gnawed at him. Would this newfound path truly lead him to the strength he so desperately sought? Turning his gaze to the fallen monster, Ye Qing noticed a peculiar message hovering above its motionless form, a prompt inviting him to recycle the creature's remains. Intrigued, he accepted without hesitation, triggering a surge of power within him. The monster's corpse disintegrated, leaving behind a mysterious card adorned with intricate runes and symbols, a repository of skills and attribute points waiting to be harnessed. Eagerly, Ye Qing attempted to absorb these newfound abilities into his being, expecting an immediate surge of strength. To his surprise, the effects were more subtle, a dormant potential awaiting activation. Confounded yet undeterred, he felt a strange energy stirring within him, a testament to the latent power he had just unlocked. Upon recovering, Ye Qing noticed more monster corpses around him, each offering skills and points for absorption. Realizing the potential of his ability, he understood it was far from weak, it could catapult him to become one of the strongest hunters in the world. Ye Qing became stronger by absorbing monsters, corpses. When he touched a spirit wolf's body, he gained a new ability called Soul Dash. But after that, eating more of the same kind of monster didn't give him new skills or as many rewards. Still, Ye Qing kept absorbing corpses until his attribute points reached 111. With plenty of points to spend, Ye Qing thought about where to put them to make himself stronger. He decided to evenly distribute the points among all his skills: strength, agility, intelligence, willpower, constitution, and luck, all set at 20 points each. Meanwhile, in another part of the dungeon, the other hunters were busy fighting monsters and collecting materials. They heard that Ye Qing had found a hidden job. They knew these hidden jobs weren't usually very valuable and were often just for fun. Their boss told them to stop talking and focus on their mission to conquer the dungeon. Hours later, they found the remains of the falcon hunting group's captain, who had been defeated within just 48 hours. Shocked by the desiccated bodies of B-rank hunters who should have easily handled low-level monsters, they suddenly found themselves surrounded by a horde, realizing too late they had been lured deeper into the dungeon. Back with Ye Qing, abandoned by his group, he seized the opportunity to absorb more corpses, steadily gaining skills and points. His efforts culminated in unlocking the Novice Scavenger's milestone, after absorbing 50 corpses, earning him rewards: a basic necklace and dagger, disappointingly weak for his level. As Ye Qing scrutinized his meager rewards, a monster lunged from behind. With newfound strength and speed from leveling up, he dodged the attack effortlessly, no longer the vulnerable novice he once was. Confident in his enhanced abilities, Ye Qing countered with a powerful attack, followed by a precise dagger strike that slew the monster. Absorbing the fallen creature's corpse, Ye Qing acquired a new passive skill, Toxic Evolution, allowing him to transform potent poisons into healing elixirs. Testing his newfound ability, he drank a poisoned potion, converting it into a healing tonic that mended his wounds instantly. Impressed, Ye Qing realized the potential of his evolving skills. Reflecting on his progress, Ye Qing decided to bolster his intelligence further, knowing it would unveil hidden insights about his foes. Despite more monsters approaching, Ye Qing no longer feared them. He welcomed the challenge, knowing that defeating more monsters would make him even stronger as a scavenger in the dungeon. On the other side of the dungeon, the hunters fought desperately for their lives against the dungeon's boss monster and its minions. Most of them had already fallen. Though the minions were reanimated corpses and of lower level than the boss, they posed a formidable challenge to the hunters. Not to mention the boss itself, a man-eating flower of immense strength. Realizing they were outmatched, some hunters attempted to retreat, but the relentless onslaught of monsters made escape nearly impossible. Panic spread among the hunters as they struggled to catch their breath between waves of attackers. The monsters proved too powerful, picking off the hunters one by one. Among them, one hunter regretted his decision to enter this deadly dungeon for quick wealth and gear. Now facing imminent death, he made a selfish choice, to sacrifice his comrades as bait to secure his own escape. When questioned by his team, he callously fled, promising to burn incense sticks in their honor once he reached safety. He ran through the dark corridors, haunted by thoughts of what could have been. In his panicked flight, he collided with Ye Qing, drawn by the sounds of battle. Ye Qing, known for his mysterious abilities, confronted the fleeing hunter. He couldn't believe the hunter would leave his friends to die. Fearing repercussions if Ye Qing reported his cowardice to the supervisory committee, the hunter decided to eliminate him. However, upon turning, he noticed a trail of slain monster corpses behind Ye Qing. Astonished, the hunters asked if Ye Qing had defeated them all, to which he affirmed. Seeing Ye Qing's strength firsthand, the hunter hesitated. He suggested Ye Qing join them to fight the monsters together, hoping to save himself from both the creatures and Ye Qing's wrath. Ye Qing, angered by the hunter's betrayal of his friends, struck out impulsively. He broke the hunter's leg, leaving him in pain and disbelief. The hunter cursed Ye Qing, but it was too late. Writhing in pain, the hunter berated Ye Qing as a trash human, demanding an explanation for the assault. Driven by memories of how hunters had treated him when he was weaker, Ye Qing used his unique ability to absorb the hunter's strength. However, the system stopped him, saying he couldn't absorb humans like monsters. Instead, it upgraded his ability, allowing him to recycle useless abilities from others with their consent. Using a magical card he found, Ye Qing gained Flame Field Control, and upgraded his Fireball to Inferno Blast, making his magic even more powerful. Excited to test his new abilities, he unleashed Inferno Blast, destroying monsters effortlessly. But the spell was so strong it disintegrated the monsters, leaving nothing to absorb, a mistake he regretted. Suddenly, an assassin-like monster attacked from behind. Ye Qing, realizing he had no melee combat skills, absorbed a fallen hunter to gain a golden shield ability. With this new defense, he defeated the assassin. After the battle, Ye Qing absorbed the assassin's body, obtaining a dagger proficiency card that granted him the ability to wield daggers with finesse, launching a storm-like stabbing attack. Activating the card, Ye Qing now possessed yet another valuable skill in his growing arsenal. Now stronger and more skilled, he prepared to face the dungeon's challenges with renewed confidence. Inside the interrogation room, men in black suits were questioning a hunter who survived a dangerous dungeon expedition. They reminded him of his mission: find the Falcon group and bring them back alive. The hunter nodded, acknowledging the task's importance. They warned him that failure to find their bodies would mean no rewards for him. He reassured them he understood, already aware of the consequences. They asked if he found the Falcon group's corpses. The hunter's answer puzzled them. He had found them, but they had been recycled. Confused, the men asked what he meant. The hunter explained that Ye Qing had somehow absorbed their abilities and skills, leaving him reduced to level 1. This was unheard of, and the men suspected he might be hallucinating due to abyssal energy contamination. But the hunter insisted it was true, adamant that Ye Qing had drained them all. Meanwhile, Ye Qing was back to exploring dungeons to earn money for himself and his sister. He had sold magic crystals he found, but the black market took a big cut due to monopoly rules. Despite barely making enough to pay off old debts, Ye Qing was cautious about revealing his unique ability to recycle others' powers. He knew if the authorities found out, he could be locked up for study. So, he resolved to keep making money quietly until he could secure his sister's future. At another location, preparations were underway for a risky raid on a new B-rank dungeon. The leader warned of unknown dangers inside, promising high rewards for those brave enough to conquer it. Only high-ranking B hunters were allowed to join. Ye Qing, only level 1, stepped forward to ask if he could come along. The leader scoffed, calling him trash and saying he didn't belong with them. Just as it seemed Ye Qing would be left out again, Lu Xingran, a famous hunter from the powerful Lu family, intervened. She insisted Ye Qing be included to fill out their numbers. Despite objections, her family's authority over the dungeon's location gave her the final say. Relieved, Ye Qing felt grateful for her support. Ye Qing felt relieved as he exhaled deeply, but noticed Lu Xingran staring at him coldly. He wondered why she was looking at him like that until memories from 2 years ago flooded back. She had been in danger, surrounded by monsters, and he, despite being weaker, had rushed to protect her. Back then, Lu Xingran had been shocked that someone like Ye Qing, a trash picker, as she called him, could fend off dangerous beasts. During their conversation, Ye Qing had proudly celebrated his first demon kill and earned his very first experience point. Lu Xingran couldn't comprehend why he risked his life for just 1 experience point, looking at him with disbelief. He explained his ambition to level up and earn money. While she questioned his motives, Ye Qing remained focused on the valuable drops the monsters left behind, dreaming of selling them for profit. He challenged Lu Xingran's understanding of his difficult life, believing she couldn't comprehend his struggles because of her privileged background. When Lu Xingran asked him about his true reasons for wanting to level up, Ye Qing revealed his deep desire to protect his family. Touched by his sincerity, Lu Xingran promised to support him on his journey. She invited him to join her group once he improved his skills, sealing their promise with a handshake. Their conversation was interrupted by one of Lu Xingran's anxious aides, who urgently summoned her back to her father, the president. A stern bodyguard reminded Ye Qing of his status as a trash picker, and barred him from getting too close to Lu Xingran. As they left, Lu Xingran threw Ye Qing a material she had obtained from the dungeon beast, a token of gratitude for his earlier bravery. Ye Qing caught the gift with a grateful smile. He returned to his work with renewed determination, knowing he would continue to strive for strength and prosperity for the sake of his family. Back in the present moment, Ye Qing's thoughts drifted to the past, interrupted abruptly by one of the hunters approaching him. The hunter whispered that the woman Ye Qing had been watching was Lu Xingran. Renowned among hunters, he was then told to focus on gathering monster materials, and Ye Qing agreed. With a stern reminder to focus on their task of gathering materials from monster drops, Ye Qing agreed wholeheartedly. Determined not to be a liability while keeping his gaze away from Lu Xingran, he received encouragement from her on his newfound resolve. She commended his mindset and urged him to prepare his gear as they readied to conquer the dungeon. All the hunters assembled and geared up meticulously. Ye Qing entered the dungeon with a newfound determination to earn money and return safely, recalling his previous dungeon exploits where he had acquired numerous skills and abilities, including Shield Warrior and Berserk abilities. His unique method of distributing attribute points ensured no skill deficiencies, amassing over 100 points in total. In that instant, Ye Qing activated his skill, Observing Eye, allowing him to look at the attributes of his fellow hunters. One stood out with a mere 12 points in strength and a mere 1 point in intelligence. By comparison, Ye Qing boasted a staggering 100 points in strength, making him at least 100 times stronger than an average person. As Ye Qing assessed their strengths, a sense of impending danger washed over him. His instincts proved true as he swiftly detected a trap, a set of walls closing in rapidly. Before the other hunters could react, Ye Qing had already dismantled the trap mechanism. The sudden noise startled the group, turning their attention to Ye Qing, who appeared visibly shaken. When questioned about the disturbance, Ye Qing attributed it to the natural reverberations of the unstable underground structures. His explanation eased their concerns momentarily, as they understood the inherent risks of exploring such hazardous dungeons. Just then, one of the hunters stumbled upon a chest and excitedly alerted the group. They gathered around the chest, eager to unlock its secrets, but their enthusiasm quickly lowered when they realized it was an A-rank chest, only accessible to skilled assassin-type hunters. Disappointment hung in the air until Ye Qing stepped forward with quiet confidence. "I can open it," Ye Qing declared calmly, catching everyone off guard. Without hesitation, he approached the chest and, with practiced finesse, swiftly unlocked it. The lid swung open effortlessly, revealing its hidden contents. The hunters stared in disbelief as Ye Qing's ability defied their expectations. One of the hunters, astonished, remarked, "Lock-picking is a skill reserved for assassins above level 5. How can a level 1 scavenger open such a chest?" Ye Qing, quick to maintain his cover, spun a tale about his extensive experience scavenging dungeons, often encountering locked chests amidst the debris. He explained that over time, he had learned various skills out of necessity, including the art of picking locks. Impressed with what he did, the hunters accepted Ye Qing's explanation, and the focus shifted to exploring further into the dungeon. As they ventured deeper, Ye Qing's keen intuition once again proved invaluable. Sensing something amiss, Ye Qing abruptly halted the group and instructed a puzzled female hunter to stop. He grabbed a nearby stone and tossed it ahead. In an instant, the trap sprang to life. Walls lined with lethal spikes closed in, poised to impale anyone in their path. Ye Qing's swift action had averted catastrophe, saving the group from certain peril. Despite the narrow escape, the female hunter couldn't suppress her curiosity and wondered if Ye Qing was actually a level 1 hunter. Ye Qing responded calmly and told her not to overthink it, as he had dealt with these kind of traps many times in countless dungeons while scavenging, so it was natural for him to notice the traps. His nonchalant explanation convinced everyone except Lu Xingran, who remained cautious and observant, withholding her full trust. Nonetheless, the others respected Ye Qing's quick thinking and resourcefulness. Impressed by his skill, one of the hunters offered Ye Qing a modest ability as a token of appreciation. Despite this, some hunters still doubted his true abilities, but they agreed to move forward cautiously. After exploring for some time, they stumbled upon a hidden treasure room. The discovery sparked excitement among the hunters, who speculated about the riches it might hold. One of them suggested it could be a peaceful reward room, free from monsters. At the heart of the room sat a peculiar setup, a cup brimming with crimson liquid and a stone tablet inscribed with cryptic symbols. One of the hunters picked up the tablet, attempting to decipher its meaning. However, Lu Xingran, ever vigilant, warned them not to let their guard down. Her instincts proved right when the liquid began to spill from the cup, triggering a sudden announcement: the blood trial had begun. Panic seized the group as the room transformed into a trap, spawning the menacing blood nightmare before their eyes. Lu Xingran swiftly took charge, rallying the hunters for battle against the onslaught of monsters. Despite being surrounded, she led with determination, her skills tested to their limits. Meanwhile, amidst the chaos, Ye Qing remained remarkably composed. His mind raced with calculations, not of strategy against the monsters, but of how best to conceal his true abilities. Aware that revealing his full strength could raise suspicions among the hunters, he made a calculated decision. Quietly activating the Ring of Weakness, a seemingly harmless artifact that allowed him to suppress his attributes, Ye Qing chose to fight at only a quarter of his true power. It was a risky gambit, but he was determined to maintain the facade of a novice hunter. Even with his powers dampened, Ye Qing's agility and precision were unmatched. Using his Spirit Dash ability, he swiftly dispatched several monsters with precise strikes, earning surprised glances from his companions. Lu Xingran, amidst the chaos, couldn't help but notice Ye Qing's exceptional skill. Each move he made seemed deliberate and efficient, far beyond what his level would suggest. She filed away her observations for later consideration, focused on the pressing danger at hand. The monsters, cunning and adaptive, began to take on forms resembling the hunters themselves. Their ability to mimic and strengthen themselves based on their opponents' attributes made them formidable adversaries. In the heat of battle, one of the hunters suffered a severe injury, his arm torn by a monstrous version of himself. Just as the creature poised to deliver a fatal blow, Lu Xingran intervened with a swift and decisive strike, saving her comrade and dispatching the monster with lethal precision. Frustrated by the hunters' struggles against what she deemed inferior foes, Lu Xingran scolded them sternly, telling them that she did not enter the dungeon together with them just so she could rescue them when they were in trouble. She told them to pull themselves together and also told them that the opponents was not a true test of their strength. Despite her leadership, the situation grew dire as more monsters flooded into the chamber. Sensing an opportunity to turn the tide, Ye Qing took charge once more. Positioning himself protectively in front of his fellow hunters, he unleashed a powerful, great flame explosion, a spell of remarkable potency for his supposed level. The hunters watched in awe and disbelief as the spell engulfed a cluster of monsters, reducing them to ash in seconds. Murmurs of disbelief and confusion spread among them as they could not believe that a level 1 hunter could wield such devastating magic. Seizing the moment, Ye Qing followed up with shock, immobilizing the remaining monsters, and then activated Berserk, enhancing his speed and strength to swiftly dispatch those before him. In the midst of the chaos, a monstrous form emerged, one that bore striking similarities to Ye Qing himself. It was a king-level monster, infused with attributes absorbed from Ye Qing during their brief encounter. Realizing the danger of facing an enemy so closely mirroring his abilities, Ye Qing braced himself for a grueling battle of wits and strength. Just as he prepared to engage the monster, Lu Xingran stepped forward, her eyes blazing with determination. She told Ye Qing to step aside and that she would be the one to handle this. Her voice carried a rare intensity, born of ambition and a personal quest to conquer the deepest levels of the Tower of the End. Failure here would mean more than defeat, it would shatter her aspirations and familial expectations. Summoning all her strength, Lu Xingran unleashed a devastating, comet strike, aiming to shatter the monster's defenses. Ye Qing, witnessing her formidable display, felt a newfound respect for her abilities, impressed by her determination and skill. Despite her powerful attack, the monster stood unharmed before Lu Xingran. She couldn't believe her strength didn't affect it. Even though she was an S-class hunter, she always felt inferior to her older siblings who shared her surname, Lu. She had been mocked and laughed at by her family from the start, so she was determined to become stronger, even if it meant starting from scratch. Each challenge she faced was a stepping stone towards surpassing her limitations, a journey she undertook alone to forge her own path to strength. Determined now more than ever, Lu Xingran unleashed another relentless assault on the monster, pouring all her might into the attack. Yet, her fierce determination could not compensate for her current lack of strength, and she found herself overmatched by the relentless creature. The other hunters watched in astonishment as the beast dominated Lu Xingran, their fears growing that this could spell the end for them all. If even Lu Xingran, their strongest member, could be overpowered, what hope did they have? Seeing Lu Xingran struggling, Ye Qing made a decision to intervene, rushing forward to aid her. Despite her injuries, Lu Xingran couldn't help but feel a mix of frustration and gratitude towards Ye Qing for interfering in her battle. Ye Qing activated his observing eye ability to examine the monstrous creature for any weaknesses. Being at king level, the monster had developed resistance to abnormal conditions. At such high levels, it could even become completely immune to freezing, dizziness, paralysis, and slowness. Weak spots that were once vulnerabilities no longer posed any advantage as its level increased. Realizing this, Ye Qing decided to unleash his full potential, activating all his attributes. Despite matching the monster in strength, he found it immensely challenging to bring it down. Every part of its body he destroyed swiftly regenerated and no apparent weakness could be found. Suddenly, Ye Qing noticed a strange behavior in the monster, as if it were under some form of external control. Recalling a stone tablet with inscriptions that might hold the key to defeating the creature, Ye Qing urgently shouted to a nearby hunter to kick the tablet over to him. Responding swiftly, the hunter sent the tablet sliding towards Ye Qing. Utilizing his ability to decipher ancient languages, Ye Qing quickly uncovered a solution right before his eyes. He regretted not using his observing eye earlier. If he had, he might have found the clue sooner and avoided this tough fight. At that critical moment, the monster devoured the stone tablet, triggering an ability that rendered it invincible. Frozen in place, it puzzled the hunters, who were unsure why it had stopped all movement. Ye Qing quickly identified the situation, explaining that the monster had entered an invincible mode. Just then, Lu Xingran approached Ye Qing. She proposed that her ability could momentarily freeze the monster, allowing Ye Qing to locate its vulnerable spot. Understanding the urgency and complexity of the situation, Ye Qing acknowledged her suggestion, emphasizing that no challenge could be faced alone indefinitely. He proposed a collaborative effort, urging Lu Xingran to team up with him to strategize against the creature. Encouraged by Ye Qing's confidence and determination, Lu Xingran agreed with a smile, ready to contribute her skills to the effort. Other hunters gathered around, pledging their support. Ye Qing accepted their help, uniting them in a plan to take down the monster together. He briefed them that the monster's invincibility would last for 5 seconds before it entered berserk mode, where it would rampage for 30 seconds. Their goal: survive the rampage to have a chance at victory. With everyone on board, Lu Xingran took charge, directing a warrior-class hunter to provoke the monster while instructing a mage-class hunter to target its newly formed tentacles and shield Ye Qing. Under Lu Xingran's decisive leadership, the team coordinated smoothly. Ye Qing addressed the hunters, emphasizing that the stone tablet held the key to deciphering the blood test and defeating the monsters. Their immediate goal was to retrieve it from the monster's belly. Ye Qing volunteered for the difficult task, proposing a daring plan: he would enter the monster's belly himself to retrieve the tablet. Lu Xingran was taken aback by Ye Qing's audacious idea, but before she could object, he charged directly at the monster, determined to carry out his plan. Reacting swiftly, Lu Xingran instructed the archer-class hunters to target the ceiling with their arrows. The hunters quickly complied, sending a barrage that caused large debris to crash down onto the monster, dealing damage and aiding Ye Qing's risky attempt to retrieve the tablet. Taking advantage of the distraction, Lu Xingran used her frost abilities to freeze the lower part of the monster, immobilizing it temporarily and creating an opening for Ye Qing to approach. Ye Qing possessed extraordinary regeneration abilities, allowing him to swiftly heal minor wounds and shrug off the monster's sporadic attacks. He boosted his speed and defensive maneuvers, steadily closing the distance towards the monster. However, just as he was about to reach his target, the monster suddenly launched a sneak attack that caught Ye Qing off guard, dealing a powerful blow. The sight of Ye Qing taking such a hit left everyone visibly concerned. Ye Qing felt defeated and on the verge of giving up. Despite his increased strength, he couldn't shake the feeling of being worthless, believing nothing would ever change for him. But he refused to surrender easily. He refused to remain the weakling he once was. With newfound determination, Ye Qing activated his unique recycling ability. Everyone present was astonished by Ye Qing's newfound power. In a decisive moment, Ye Qing instructed the system to recycle him. However, the system couldn't recycle its owner. Undiscouraged, Ye Qing ordered the system to forcefully eject him from its body with all its might. The system complied, propelling Ye Qing with tremendous force directly towards the monster. He pierced through its body, retrieving the precious tablet lodged within. With the stone tablet in hand, Ye Qing deciphered the ancient script inscribed upon it, unlocking the key to completing the blood trial and vanquishing all the monsters in the vicinity. The hunters erupted in celebration, filled with joy at their success in completing the trial and ensuring their safety. As the atmosphere settled, each hunter present experienced a surge in their abilities, leveling up except for Ye Qing, who remained at level 1. This outcome didn't surprise Ye Qing as he knew that his maximum level was destined to remain unchanged. Just as the hunters celebrated their victory, a treasure vault emerged from the ground, filled with magnificent treasures. Excitement filled the air as they gazed upon the valuable artifacts. However, disappointment clouded Ye Qing's face as he realized that the treasures required a minimum level of 10 to be wielded, far beyond his current level 1. He reluctantly stepped back, unable to partake in the spoils. Seeing Ye Qing's disappointment, Lu Xingran approached him and declared that he, having contributed the most to the trial's success, should distribute the treasures. Ye Qing modestly declined, insisting he desired nothing. Yet, in a hushed exchange, he confided in Lu Xingran, asking her a favor. He proposed selling the treasures to her and the Lu family, as they were wealthy and he was in dire need of funds. He also requested that she keep his true capabilities in the dungeon a secret, allowing her to take credit for conquering it instead. Lu Xingran hesitated, puzzled by Ye Qing's desire to conceal his abilities. Nonetheless, she agreed to honor his wishes. Outside the dungeon, hundreds of men in black suits, Lu Xingran's bodyguards, waited anxiously. Time ticked by as they prepared to mobilize a rescue team for their absent leader. Just as they were on the verge of action, Lu Xingran emerged from the dungeon, accompanied by the other hunters. Relief washed over her bodyguards, their tension melting away at the sight of her safe return. Amidst the joyful reunion, a news reporter approached, eager to capture the moment. He congratulated Lu Xingran on her remarkable achievement in conquering the dungeon, seemingly on her own. Remembering her promise to Ye Qing, Lu Xingran gracefully accepted the praise, proudly affirming her reputation as an S-rank hunter. Privately, she wondered about Ye Qing's peculiar request to keep his role in the dungeon's success a secret. What drove him to insist on staying in the background despite his evident skills? The mystery of Ye Qing's intentions lingered in her thoughts as the crowd celebrated their victory and safe return. Meanwhile, inside the dungeon, Ye Qing sat in the center of the blood trial room, his attention fixed on the ancient tablet before him. Suddenly, a small fragment of the defeated monster emerged from the tablet. Ye Qing's face lit up with a grin as he realized the potential it held. Even this tiny creature could become a source of strength for him. With his unique ability, Ye Qing absorbed the essence of the monster, enhancing his own power. After consuming the monster, Ye Qing unlocked a new ability called Nightmare Body. This skill allowed him to summon a spectral clone fueled by life essence, capable of mimicking his actions and absorbing or dealing damage once before fading away. Excited by this discovery, Ye Qing planned to further develop and improve this ability in the future. Content with his achievements in the dungeon, Ye Qing decided it was time to leave. Later, in a quiet coffee shop, he carefully examined the items he had obtained from his adventure. However, he realized that selling high-level items might attract unwanted attention from supervisors. Deep in thought about how to proceed, Ye Qing accidentally pressed a button on his device. To his surprise, this action triggered the automatic recycling of the weapons in his possession into basic points. Ye Qing was astonished to learn that he could convert these basic points into currency for repairs and enhancements. Without hesitation, he used these points to upgrade his older equipment. Not only were his weapons repaired to perfection, but they were also enhanced beyond their previous capabilities. Ye Qing was thrilled with the results, feeling well prepared for any future challenges. With his strengthened weapons and newfound abilities, Ye Qing left the coffee shop with a renewed sense of confidence. His strategic thinking and resourcefulness had proven effective once again, ensuring he was ready to face whatever trials awaited him next. Ye Qing completed the tutorial, and the system congratulated him, presenting 2 rewards. The first reward was a novice formula for a convenient magical potion capable of instantly restoring mana while significantly reducing fatigue. The second reward offered a random attribute increase of +2. After reviewing the options, Ye Qing chose the magical potion formula. At that moment, Ye Qing reasoned that attribute points were not currently scarce, but his greatest concern lay in the unpredictable depths of the abyss. Many adventurers, lacking proper preparation, often depleted their magic reserves before reaching the boss room, forcing them to retreat and resupply. Because of this, magic potions were essential to a group's survival, and their value could not be overstated. As Ye Qing reflected on this, the system notified him that he had acquired the item regeneration skill. It further explained that regenerating the convenient magical potion required 6 basic points in a random container. This left Ye Qing momentarily puzzled by the unusual requirement of a random container for activating the skill. Ye Qing reflected on the requirements for regenerating items, finding it unsurprising that basic points were necessary. However, he remained puzzled by the additional need for a random container. Seeking clarity, he called over one of the shop workers and requested a container. With the container in hand, Ye Qing conducted a series of experiments to understand how to use the newly acquired skill. After some trial and error, he succeeded in recycling an item, though he observed that the regenerated item appeared odd. Despite its unusual appearance, it seemed functional. To test its effectiveness, Ye Qing drank the contents of the container. Almost immediately, the system informed him that he had successfully created 5 doses of the convenient magical potion. However, as soon as he took a sip, he was overcome with nausea, as the potion tasted like rancid juice. Despite the unpleasant taste, Ye Qing felt a surge of power coursing through him. The system confirmed that his magic reserves had increased and his fatigue had significantly decreased. Ye Qing reassured himself that this outcome was beneficial. His magic had been restored, and the exhaustion weighing on his body had vanished. Moments later, Ye Qing left the shop, considering the possibility of clearing one more abyss before the day ended. As he walked, lost in thought, a group of men dressed in black approached him. They were none other than the debt collectors. A bald man stepped forward, remarking that it had only been a few days since their last encounter, yet Ye Qing's aura had completely changed. He asked if Ye Qing had stumbled upon some treasure while scavenging for trash. The man added that he had been searching for Ye Qing for some time and had nearly reported him as missing to their boss. Before the man could continue, Ye Qing interrupted, firmly stating that all his debts, including interest, had been paid in full. He told them there was no reason to bother him any longer. Hearing this, the bald man signaled for the others to back off. As they stepped away, he moved closer to Ye Qing and reminded him that although his debt had been cleared, his work contract remained active. He warned Ye Qing not to forget that someone like him, a trash picker, would always live the life of a trash picker, nothing more. The bald man sneered at Ye Qing, telling him to stop pretending to be something he wasn't. Calling him a lowlife, he suddenly knocked the container out of Ye Qing's hand. As the liquid splattered across the ground, the man accused Ye Qing of being blind, claiming he had spilled the drink all over him. He warned Ye Qing that there would be consequences for challenging a B-rank job changer, especially since Ye Qing was nothing more than a level 0 scavenger. The other men stepped forward, eager to punish Ye Qing. They had always found him unpleasant and saw this as the perfect opportunity. Ye Qing quickly assessed the situation. He reminded himself of the supervision regulations for job changers, which strictly prohibited the use of abilities outside the abyss. Only law enforcers and special armed personnel were permitted to activate their powers in public spaces. Realizing he needed an advantage, Ye Qing scanned the area for a blind spot in the security cameras. If he could avoid detection, he could activate his recycling and regeneration abilities without violating the rules. As Ye Qing considered his next move, the bald man stepped closer and sneered at him. He mockingly assigned Ye Qing the task of licking the spilled milk tea off the ground, calling it a fitting job for a trash picker. Laughing loudly, he ridiculed Ye Qing, calling it a rare opportunity someone like him shouldn't waste. Irritated by the man's condescending words, Ye Qing refused without hesitation. The bald man's expression darkened with fury as he prepared to strike Ye Qing. Just as he was about to attack, an unfamiliar figure suddenly appeared. Rodrigo, an S-rank member of the Blood Oath hunting group, seized the bald man by the arm. The bald man's bravado vanished, replaced by fear as he recognized Rodrigo. Rodrigo calmly asked if the bald man had gathered enough people for the upcoming Abyss expedition. Panicked, the bald man stammered that they were still one person short. Rodrigo immediately pressed him for the location of the missing recruit. Before the bald man could respond, Rodrigo's eyes caught sight of Ye Qing quietly slipping away. Without hesitation, Rodrigo called out to Ye Qing, announcing that he was hired. The bald man quickly objected, telling Rodrigo that Ye Qing was nothing more than a trash picker. He insisted that Rodrigo needed someone capable of holding their own and promised to find a more suitable candidate immediately. Rodrigo dismissed the protest, explaining that under the Red Moon state, the monsters in the abyss would become extremely vicious. What he required wasn't strength but someone expendable, cannon fodder to draw attention and take hits. As long as the person could fulfill that role, their abilities didn't matter. Hearing Rodrigo mention the Red Moon, Ye Qing's thoughts shifted. He recalled that during a red moon, abyss monsters entered a berserk state, and rare monsters would respawn. The rewards for slaying them would double, and the magic crystals they dropped would be of a higher purity. A confident smile crossed Ye Qing's face. Recognizing the opportunity, he told Rodrigo he was willing to join the raid. Rodrigo, pleased by Ye Qing's response, accepted without hesitation. Rodrigo then called the rest of the group together. As the team assembled, Ye Qing noticed a familiar figure approaching. It was the man he had encountered in the first dungeon, the same one who had used his team as bait to escape, only to be stopped by Ye Qing. Ye Qing had not only foiled his escape but had also absorbed all of his abilities. The man was about to confront Ye Qing, but before he could speak, Ye Qing grabbed him and pulled him aside to a more secluded spot. Within moments, it was just the two of them. The man's anger flared as he glared at Ye Qing, furious over what had been done to him. Ye Qing, unfazed by his reaction, calmly explained that if he hadn't borrowed everyone's strength during the abyss encounter, none of them would have made it out alive. He told the man that he owed his survival to Ye Qing's actions. Before the man could respond, Rodrigo suddenly appeared out of nowhere, asking if the two knew each other. Without hesitation, Ye Qing denied any connection between them. Rodrigo smirked, remarking that it made sense. He couldn't imagine someone who abandoned his teammates to die ever having real friends. With that, Rodrigo walked away. Once Rodrigo was gone, Ye Qing turned to the man and asked how he had managed to escape the abyss. The man explained that the committee had initially planned to sentence him to 15 years, but he had sacrificed all his assets and paid a fine of 1.5 million to secure his freedom. He made it clear that everything he had lost was because of Ye Qing. Now penniless and stripped of his levels, the man had no choice but to start over as cannon fodder. He threatened Ye Qing, demanding repayment or he would report him to the World Committee. Ye Qing's expression darkened at the threat. He challenged the man to repeat himself and warned that if he dared to follow through, Ye Qing would make sure to recycle him, turning him into nothing more than leftovers. In the bustling subway of City C, a group of hunters were getting ready to explore a dungeon. Zhou Tong, a level 3 bard, greeted Ye Qing and welcomed him to their team of adventurers dubbed the Cannon Fodder. Curious about Ye Qing's role, Zhou Tong asked what he did. Ye Qing, a level 1 scavenger, replied modestly. Chen Xingdian, a level 1 mage who had been with Ye Qing earlier, introduced himself as well. Zhou Tong reassured everyone that it's normal to start at the bottom and there was no need to mock each other as they were all there to risk their lives for money, and there's nothing nobler than that. Ye Qing silently agreed, figuring this mismatched group would stick together. Zhou Tong then introduced 2 more team members to Ye Qing and stressed the need for a leader. Since he was the highest level among them, Zhou Tong appointed himself as leader. Lao Zhu, a level 2 hunter, and Lao Zhong, a level 3 hunter warrior, agreed with Zhou Tong's decision without hesitation. Just then, Rodrigo stepped forward to announce something important. He informed everyone that, alongside the 6 main members of the Blood Oath, there would be 5 temporary members joining them this time. One of the Blood Oath members cautioned Rodrigo not to speak too highly of the cannon fodders, describing them as bait to reduce their own risks. Rodrigo went on to explain the nature of the abyss they were about to enter, a maze filled with traps in every room. He tasked the cannon fodders with finding the path to the boss room as quickly as possible and returning with that crucial information for the main team. He jokingly mentioned that he didn't expect them to be skilled in combat, so if they encountered monsters, their best bet was to run away. Serious now, Rodrigo laid out the terms. For the cannon fodders to earn any share of the reward, at least one of them must survive. If only one made it out alive, they would claim all the rewards. At that moment, Lao Zhong asked Lao Zhu how he was feeling. Lao Zhu confessed that he couldn't hold back any longer. He had 4 daughters eagerly waiting for dinner at home, and he desperately needed the money. Lao Zhong shared that his wife was very ill and required expensive treatment, which compelled him to take the risk and join the mission for the money. After Rodrigo's instructions, the group entered the abyss. As they walked, Lao Zhong noticed Ye Qing, a newcomer, and mentioned it to Lao Zhu. Lao Zhu remarked that newcomer was common among cannon fodder groups, as few ever made it out alive from the abyss, requiring constant replacements. Lao Zhong however clarified that he meant something different. Ye Qing seemed unusually calm and confident for a cannon fodder. All 5 cannon fodders were now inside the dungeon. After a while, Zhou Tong remarked on the lack of monsters despite their long trek. Chen Xingdian nervously warned Zhou Tong not to jinx their luck. Suddenly, the temperature dropped, and Zhou Tong regretted not wearing warmer clothes. As they continued, Zhou Tong accidentally triggered a trap, causing a large axe to swing down. Ye Qing reacted swiftly, saving Zhou Tong from harm. Zhou Tong didn't realize the danger until he felt a slight bump on the head. Turning around, he saw the axe on the ground. An annoyed Chen Xingdian blamed Zhou Tong for setting off the trap, while Ye Qing quietly wondered how Zhou Tong had survived so long with such carelessness. Zhou Tong admitted luck played a big role and urged everyone to keep moving. As they moved forward cautiously, creatures covered in webs suddenly dropped from the dungeon ceiling. Zhou Tong dodged quickly but soon panicked, retreating behind the group. They cautiously observed the creatures, which unexpectedly burst into action. Demonic spiders, elite level 5 monsters capable of spitting venom. Zhou Tong, visibly frightened, recognized them as one of his greatest fears. At that moment, Chen Xingdian activated his burn ability, hoping to scorch the spiders, but their elite strength rendered his attack ineffective. As they battled, a spider lunged towards Ye Qing, aiming to bite his leg, but he swiftly countered with a devastating kick that severed the spider's head from its body. Chen Xingdian, seeing this, grew annoyed at what he thought was Ye Qing's arrogance, dismissing him as just an ability stealer. Unfazed, Ye Qing recycled the spider's corpse, gaining an attribute point and discovering a rare material known as arcana. This arcana was a weapon that could poison opponents, boosting damage by 120% on critical hits. Intrigued, Ye Qing realized that recycling corpses could yield not only skill and job cards but also arcana cards that enhanced equipment. Meanwhile, realizing his lack of combat abilities, Zhou Tong, a level 3 bard, focused on buffing his fellow cannon fodders. However, his clumsy nature led to an unintended buff on the spiders, making them stronger. One of the buffed spiders charged at Zhou Tong, threatening his life. Reacting quickly, Ye Qing intervened and swiftly eliminated the spider with a single precise strike. Impressed by Ye Qing's prowess, the other hunters watched in astonishment as he effortlessly eliminated the remaining spiders attacking them. They were amazed that a cannon fodder possessed such formidable strength, capable of handling the monsters alone. Ye Qing quietly considered the demonized spiders' poison resistance, realizing why the quenching poison arcana was extracted from them. He understood that using such arcana on himself wouldn't show immediate effects due to their resilience, but their physical strength was remarkable. Meanwhile, Zhou Tong believed his buff had contributed to Ye Qing's newfound strength, his only ability as a bard. The spiders, having witnessed Ye Qing's skill, hesitated to attack him. Ye Qing knew their intelligence meant they wouldn't confront an unbeatable opponent, so they withdrew. The other hunters breathed a sigh of relief at the spiders' retreat, acknowledging Ye Qing's pivotal role in their survival even in the first room. Ye Qing continued recycling the slain spiders, accumulating numerous basic points. He used most of them and reserved one quenching poison card for later use. As their leader, Zhou Tong urged the group forward now that the monsters had withdrawn, cautioning them to avoid triggering any more traps. Ye Qing couldn't help but feel puzzled, knowing that the traps triggered earlier had been due to Zhou Tong's actions. As they moved deeper into the dungeon, Ye Qing spotted a hidden door leading to a new area, possibly created by the influence of the red moon, causing new branches to form. Curious and hopeful of finding valuable items, Ye Qing decided to explore this unknown territory. He summoned a blood nightmare clone of himself to join the group while he ventured into the new area alone. Upon entering, the area appeared brighter than the previous one, but Ye Qing's exploration was suddenly interrupted by a ferocious monster attack. This spider-like creature was far stronger than any he had encountered before, with thick defenses that nullified his attacks. It struck Ye Qing forcefully with its leg, sending him flying back. Using his observing eye, Ye Qing identified the creature as a brood mother, a level 20 monster. Instead of fear, Ye Qing felt excitement at encountering such a rare elite creature. If he could defeat it, there was potential to obtain valuable recyclable items. Reacting swiftly to the brood mother's web attack, Ye Qing dodged and countered with his Great Flame Explosion ability, aiming for its head. Infuriated, the monster retaliated by shooting iron-hard webs capable of lethal damage. Ye Qing realized his fire-based attacks were useless against the monster's immunity, so he switched to his dagger, delivering a critical strike that caused the brood mother intense pain. Ye Qing noticed a surprising weakness. While lower-level demonized spiders were venomous, higher-level brood mothers lacked this trait, potentially due to their focus on defense and breeding tactics. Using a poisonous dagger, Ye Qing exploited this vulnerability, causing the poison to spread rapidly through the creature's body. As the brood mother ensnared Ye Qing in its web, immobilizing him, Ye Qing activated his Berserk ability. Harnessing a surge of strength, he broke free and confronted the creature head-on. With a devastating blow empowered by Berserk, he caused the brood mother's body to explode in defeat. Victorious, Ye Qing gained an opportunity to enhance his Berserk ability with a new card called Splattering Gore, which increased its effectiveness but came with the risk of draining his health over time. Unconcerned due to his Regeneration ability, which healed him continuously, Ye Qing embraced the enhanced Berserk mode. Additionally, defeating the brood mother yielded new abilities and equipment. Ye Qing opted to recycle the equipment of lesser value and kept those likely to fetch higher prices outside the dungeon. Through recycling, he acquired a new card ability called Brood Mother, allowing him to summon up to 4 evolving demonized broodlings to fight alongside him based on their combat experience. Impressed by the strength of his new ability, Ye Qing looked forward to employing it strategically in future battles. As the hunters continued exploring the dungeon, they stumbled upon a deep mine within the abyss. Inside, they found highly concentrated S-rank magic crystals, a rare discovery that could fetch a fortune. They speculated whether the crystals were influenced by the Red Moon's effects. Lao Tzu used his tool, the Eye of Argos, which marked a 60-meter radius on their map, alerting nearby adventurers to the presence of the valuable crystals. Chen Xingdian, seeing this, grew angry and called Lao Tzu stupid. He argued that with these crystals, they could live in luxury for the rest of their lives, questioning why Lao Tzu had exposed their find to others outside the dungeon. Lao Tzu calmly explained that if the hunters outside discovered they were hoarding the treasure, they would face severe consequences. Lao Zhong chimed in, reminding Chen that as cannon fodder, their role was to clear paths for higher-ranking adventurers. Dying in the dungeon would likely be dismissed as accidental, without anyone batting an eye. Chen, though irritated by their words, knew they were right. He blamed Ye Qing for weakening him by stealing his abilities. Despite losing levels, Chen was determined to earn cash and improve his gear to join the main scavenging teams. In a moment of distraction and greed, Chen contemplated sneaking some crystals out of the dungeon. Suddenly, disaster struck, a trap activated, and a laser-like beam shot through Lao Tzu's head, instantly killing him. The remaining hunters stood shocked and bewildered by the unexpected attack. The incident left them shaken and cautious as they realized the dangers lurking within the dungeon. They mourned Lao Tzu's death and contemplated their next moves, knowing they must tread carefully to survive and navigate the treacherous depths of the abyss. Meanwhile, Ye Qing focused on nurturing his newly summoned demonized broodling. Starting as a small level 1 creature, Ye Qing aimed to evolve it into a formidable level 5 demonized spider using basic points. He knew the broodling had potential to grow and assist him in battling monsters. After feeding it basic points, the broodling swiftly evolved into a silk spider and learned a new skill called spider web. On the other side of the abyss, Lao Zhong stood in shock at Lao Tzu's lifeless body on the ground. Chen Xingdian hastily claimed it was an accident, but Lao Zhong was far from satisfied. He lashed out at Chen, blaming his greed for Lao Tzu's death. Grabbing Chen by the neck, Lao Zhong angrily reminded him that Lao Tzu was the sole provider for his family, working tirelessly. Due to Chen's actions, Lao Tzu's family now faced uncertain futures. Chen Xingdian retorted, shouting that he needed money to survive outside the abyss. He mourned his fall from grace, from a higher level to working with lower-ranked cannon fodder. Lao Zhong couldn't comprehend Chen's lack of remorse. He drew his weapon, accusing Chen of being a team killer. In response, Chen defended himself, arguing that in this harsh world, power and wealth were the only measures of value. He rebelliously stated that they were all in the same struggle for survival, where sacrifices were sometimes inevitable. Amidst their argument, the hunters were startled by applause behind them. Turning around, they saw Rodrigo approaching with a sinister smile. He complimented Chen Xingdian's worldview and offered him a spot in his Blood Oath clan, mentioning they had room for one more. A member of Rodrigo's group noted that Lao Tzu's body was still warm, indicating he had just died. Rodrigo brushed off Lao Tzu's death as common in the deadly dungeon, where only the strong survived. He emphasized that risking one's life for money was nothing to be ashamed of, especially with the rare S-rank magic crystals appearing during the Red Moon. As Rodrigo spoke, he approached Chen Xingdian, placing a hand on his shoulder and insinuating that claiming one of the crystals required sacrificing a worthless life. Chen Xingdian trembled in fear at Rodrigo's evil words. Rodrigo's clan members drew their weapons, instructing the remaining hunters, now reduced to 4, to gather the magic crystals from the walls. They threatened to kill anyone who tried to escape. Lao Zhong warned them that triggering traps could kill them, but his pleas were ignored. Reluctantly, Lao Zhong began picking up the crystals, but just as he reached for one, he dropped to his knees, begging for mercy. He confessed he had only taken this dangerous job to pay off debts from gambling. Rodrigo mocked Lao Zhong, calling him useless. Meanwhile, Chen Xingdian contemplated escaping, but he knew Rodrigo's strength far surpassed his own. Even at full power, he wouldn't stand a chance against Rodrigo. Instead, Chen Xingdian approached Rodrigo and asked if the offer to join Blood Oath was still open. Rodrigo, momentarily forgetful, had one of his members confirm his earlier offer. Once confirmed, Chen Xingdian eagerly moved closer, only to receive a brutal kick to the head from Rodrigo. Rodrigo mocked Chen Xingdian for believing his lies, declaring him unworthy of joining his elite group. He taunted Chen Xingdian as a team killer, destined for death, and claimed his life now served only to collect crystals. Rodrigo threatened to kill all the hunters and turn them into controlled corpses to gather the crystals. Just as tensions peaked, Ye Qing's clone disappeared, and the real Ye Qing appeared. He listened to Rodrigo's threats and grew displeased. Approaching the crystals, Ye Qing confidently removed one without triggering any trap. Everyone was stunned and puzzled by this unexpected outcome. Rodrigo speculated that Ye Qing must have an extraordinarily high luck stat, possibly around 60, which prevented the traps from activating. He marveled at how a low-level player like Ye Qing could have such luck. Rodrigo's suspicion intensified when another clan member tried to take a crystal and was instantly killed by a trap. Convinced that Ye Qing possessed a rare trait related to his job, Rodrigo changed his plans. He no longer needed the other hunters. Now, only Ye Qing's luck could ensure success. Rodrigo declared his new intention to eliminate the remaining hunters. They stood helpless, caught in Rodrigo's ruthless scheme, while Ye Qing pondered his next move. Rodrigo commanded his Blood Oath members to ensure no cannon fodder escaped. Lao Zhang felt hopeless against these seasoned hunters, realizing their chances were slim. They were thinking of fleeing. Suddenly, Chen Xingdian ran away, abandoning them. Ye Qing was surprised by Chen's retreat. Now, their numerical advantage vanished, leaving them short-handed. Ye Qing, however, remained composed. He summoned 4 creatures he had recently recycled, a quartet of low-level monsters that responded to his call. Zhou Tong, initially alarmed by the sight of these creatures, relaxed as Ye Qing assured him they were allies. With a cool demeanor, Ye Qing activated his observing eye, analyzing their foes. A level 20 necromancer, a fierce level 17 berserker, 2 seasoned level 18 hunters, and a resilient level 19 paladin stood against them. Ye Qing wasn't sure how his monsters stacked up against these seasoned fighters, but he felt a glimmer of confidence in his abilities. When Ye Qing attempted to assess Rodrigo's strength, he found himself puzzled. Rodrigo's power seemed to match his own, a revelation that surprised Ye Qing and made him wary of their leader. Rodrigo admired Ye Qing's ability to control abyssal monsters, noting his unexpected skills. However, the monsters Ye Qing summoned were only level 10, much weaker than the Blood Oath members. Rodrigo instructed his team to eliminate Ye Qing's monsters without damaging the crystals. Ye Qing realized protecting the cannon fodders and fighting the Blood Oath would be tough. He urged the others to flee in Chen Xingdian's direction if they wanted to live. Lao Zhang thought Ye Qing was foolish for stalling, but he saw a chance to survive and ran. Zhou Tong, grateful to Ye Qing, promised to remember his sacrifice before running off. As they fled, misfortune struck Zhou Tong. The ceiling collapsed, blocking their path. Lao Zhang was furious, but Zhou Tong couldn't help his bad luck. They were now trapped, forced to confront the approaching Blood Oath members. On the other side, the members of the Blood Oath were locked in a fierce battle against Ye Qing's minions. One of the Blood Oath members was about to strike down a minion when it shot sticky webbing from its mouth, catching the hunter off guard. Seizing the opportunity, Ye Qing attacked the distracted hunter with his dagger, but the skilled warrior managed to block the blow just in time. "I'm a level 19 paladin," the hunter declared confidently, "much stronger than your level 1 self. You can't defeat me." With a swift move, the paladin attempted a shield bash, but Ye Qing agilely dodged the attack. Knowing his level 10 spiders could only disrupt their ranks but not defeat them outright, Ye Qing strategized quickly. Ye Qing dashed behind the paladin with incredible speed and slashed at his legs with his dagger. He was moments away from finishing the paladin off when 2 other hunters intervened, firing arrows at Ye Qing. To everyone's surprise, Ye Qing managed to dodge and block each arrow skillfully. The hunters were amazed at his speed and reflexes. Taking advantage of the distraction caused by the arrows, Ye Qing unleashed his Great Flame Explosion ability, causing the ground to erupt beneath the hunters. They narrowly evaded the fiery blast, realizing that dealing with Ye Qing was going to be much more challenging than they had anticipated. Just as Ye Qing's monsters seemed overwhelming, a berserker stormed in and began attacking them fiercely. With swift and powerful strikes, he swiftly dealt with the monsters and then turned towards Zhou Tong and Lao Zhang, intending to finish them off. Zhou Tong thought it was the end, but just as the berserker was about to strike him down, Lao Zhang stepped in, using his shield to block the attack. He blamed Zhou Tong for their predicament, urging him to stand and fight. Before Zhou Tong could respond, the berserker launched another attack. Lao Zhang tried to defend with his shield, but the blow was too strong, knocking him backwards. The berserker advanced towards Lao Zhang to deliver the final blow. In a moment of resignation, Lao Zhang shouted defiantly that he was prepared to die, finally free from his burdens and debts. The berserker raised his sword to strike, but suddenly found himself unable to move. Confused, he looked back and saw that Zhou Tong had immobilized them both with his ability. Zhou Tong, struggling to control his powers, mistakenly froze not only the berserker but also Lao Zhang. Meanwhile, Ye Qing observed the scene with confusion, unsure of what was happening. As Ye Qing watched the battle, a necromancer approached and warned him about the limits of his powers despite their strength. Ye Qing realized summoning his minions had drained a lot of his mana. He quickly drank a mana potion from his bag to replenish his energy, which puzzled the necromancer. The necromancer scoffed at Ye Qing's potion, remarking that even with restored mana, it would be too late to save him. Disregarding the necromancer's saying, Ye Qing used his ability to absorb and recycle the corpses summoned by the necromancer. Confused, the necromancer watched his undead minions disappear. With his mana fully restored, Ye Qing swiftly attacked the necromancer, landing a solid blow to his face. Watching from the sidelines, Rodrigo, impressed by Ye Qing's tactics, took an interest in him. However, Ye Qing disagreed with Rodrigo's ruthless approach of sacrificing lives for gain. Offended by Ye Qing's stance, Rodrigo dismissed him as mere cannon fodder, asserting that only ruthless individuals could thrive in the harsh world. He declared that those opposing him would perish in the dungeon, and that one side would emerge victorious while the other would be destroyed. Ye Qing chuckled when Rodrigo threatened him and said he didn't understand his words. Ye Qing believed everyone should enter and leave the abyss safely. Rodrigo mocked Ye Qing's optimism and immediately attacked with a powerful punch, knocking Ye Qing back. Ye Qing realized Rodrigo was the strongest opponent he had faced. Unbothered, Rodrigo attacked again, but Ye Qing dodged his blow. Rodrigo shouted that nothing could stand against his strength. Their battle intensified, each trying to prove themselves in the dangerous abyss. While on the other side, just as Zhou Tong's spell began to fade, the berserker broke free and lunged at him, intent on finishing him off before he could cast it again. Just as the berserker swung his sword towards Zhou Tong, Lao Zhang intervened, grappling the berserker from behind. He urged Zhou Tong to act quickly while he had the berserker restrained. Before Zhou Tong could react, however, the berserker overpowered Lao Zhang, tossing him aside and slashing his sword across Lao Zhang's stomach. Lao Zhang cried out in pain, calling desperately for Zhou Tong's help and reminding him of his role as their leader. Zhou Tong's mind raced back to when he had insisted on leading their ragtag group, believing his level 3 bard skills made him the best choice. He had hoped leadership would spare him from direct combat and hide his incompetence. Now, on his knees before the berserker, he begged for mercy, admitting his weakness and pleading for his life. Memories flooded Zhou Tong's mind of his previous failures in another team. He had been ridiculed for his inability to inflict damage and criticized for his buff spells often going awry. Eventually, his teammates had expelled him, leaving him feeling worthless and alone. Reflecting on these memories, Zhou Tong recalled sitting alone on the dungeon steps when Rodrigo approached him. Rodrigo had asked about his abilities, and Zhou Tong had reluctantly admitted to being just a level 3 bard. To Zhou Tong's surprise, Rodrigo had extended an invitation to join their dungeon raid, offering him a chance for redemption and adventure. In the midst of their battle, Ye Qing found himself outmatched by Rodrigo. A powerful blow slammed Ye Qing against the wall, leaving him reeling from the impact. Rodrigo then unleashed a technique learned from the martial artist Kang Longjun, designed to inflict continuous damage to vital organs. If Ye Qing used magic now, the injury would worsen, possibly leading to his sudden death. It was a devastating combat move, capable of crippling even the most skilled magic users. Fortunately, Ye Qing managed to dodge the lethal strike just in time. Now on the defensive, he had to quickly devise a strategy to counter Rodrigo's relentless attacks. He knew he couldn't afford to make any mistakes against such a formidable opponent. As Ye Qing evaded Rodrigo's relentless pursuit, he searched for an opening to turn the tide of battle. With every dodge and parry, he calculated his next move carefully, trying to outwit Rodrigo's aggressive fighting style. In the midst of their intense battle, Ye Qing suddenly noticed something and urgently called out to Zhou Tong. But before he could finish his call, Rodrigo closed in on Ye Qing with a devastating attack that sent him flying back, crashing near Zhou Tong. Lying on the ground, Ye Qing spoke to Zhou Tong, emphasizing that dwelling on past weaknesses and hoping for pity from others was futile. Ye Qing understood Zhou Tong's struggles deeply. He too had yearned for power more than anyone, grappling with his own shortcomings while battling monsters. Despite feeling useless at times, Ye Qing never considered running from challenges. He told Zhou Tong that fear of physical weakness was insignificant compared to the danger of a weak spirit. Ye Qing shared how he faced countless life-threatening situations and often found himself overpowered, but he never gave up. Despite his physical limitations, his resolve remained unwavering. He likened himself to a king in the making, despite his humble beginnings as a trash picker. Zhou Tong listened intently to Ye Qing's words. He pondered his own situation, realizing that without strength, he would not survive. He vowed not to hide behind teammates anymore but to grow stronger for himself. He resolved to no longer shy away from challenges but to forge his own path to strength. Upon hearing Zhou Tong's declaration, the berserker scoffed and mocked him, claiming that a mere level 3 support could never penetrate his level 17 armor, no matter how hard he tried. But in that moment, a fire ignited within Zhou Tong. Determination surged through him like never before. He discarded his sword and grasped a microphone, shouting into it to activate his special ability. The air around them crackled with newfound power as Zhou Tong's ability surged, greatly boosting Ye Qing's strength beyond what anyone expected. Witnesses were stunned by Zhou Tong's unexpected display of power, except for Ye Qing, who had anticipated the outcome. With a smile, Ye Qing proclaimed Zhou Tong to be the greatest support he had ever encountered. Empowered by Zhou Tong's ability, Ye Qing accessed his own unique skill, inspiration, which amplified all his skills and attributes to unprecedented levels. With a swift command, Ye Qing summoned a blood nightmare, a dark creature that morphed into a perfect replica of himself. The clone immediately lunged at the berserker, entwining itself around his body. The berserker's confident demeanor turned to fear-stricken screams as the blood nightmare tightened its grip, squeezing the life out of him. The berserker writhed in agony as the relentless grip of the blood nightmare tightened around him, each second bringing him closer to his demise. The dungeon echoed with his cries, marking the swift turn of fortunes brought by Zhou Tong and Ye Qing's coordinated assault. At that moment, Rodrigo launched a powerful attack towards Ye Qing, but with Zhou Tong's buff enhancing his magical regeneration, Ye Qing managed to evade the blow. The increased magic in his body allowed him to heal faster from Rodrigo's earlier damage, making the fight against Rodrigo less hard than before. Sensing an opportunity, Ye Qing activated his berserk mode and unleashed his ability, splattering gore, aiming directly at Rodrigo. The devastating attack shattered Rodrigo's armor, much to his shock. He couldn't believe a level 1 like Ye Qing could breach his defenses. Ye Qing knew the attack's special effect ignored armor, but it came at a cost. Each use accelerated his blood loss. He resolved to end the fight swiftly before his condition worsened. Rodrigo remained unfazed, intrigued that a mere level 1-inch trash picker could challenge him. Determined not to be overshadowed in skill, Rodrigo launched a powerful punch that landed squarely on Ye Qing's frame. He taunted Ye Qing, emphasizing the stark difference in their strength and boasting about his preference for pure destructive power over more weaker styles. With a surge of determination, Rodrigo unleashed his signature move, the instant-kill heavy-breaking punch, propelling Ye Qing through the air. Yet, undeterred by the forceful impact, Ye Qing swiftly regained his footing. Rodrigo laughed at Ye Qing's resilience, asserting his dominance and prowess. Ye Qing, unfazed by Rodrigo's taunts, focused all his remaining energy into bolstering his strength. Instantly, his muscles visibly swelled as his strength surged to new heights. Rodrigo charged at Ye Qing, undeterred by Ye Qing's increased strength, confident that he could still overpower him. He unleashed a powerful attack, but at the same moment, Ye Qing retaliated with equal force. Their attacks collided, yet Ye Qing's proved superior, sending Rodrigo hurtling backwards with his hands visibly damaged. Shock registered on Rodrigo's face as he realized someone could match his power. Unbothered by Rodrigo's astonishment, Ye Qing pressed forward, relentless in his assault. He informed Rodrigo that there was no time to be surprised, as the battle was about to end. Ye Qing seized Rodrigo by the head, ready to deliver the finishing blow. Rodrigo flashed back to 8 years ago when he was just a low-ranking member among hunters. They often made him clean equipment dirtied from battling monsters. One senior hunter laughed at Rodrigo's aspirations, reminded him of the rule among the lion-hearted hunters: the weak were only fit for menial tasks like shining shoes. To earn his place as an official member, Rodrigo had to prove himself worthy. Another hunter chuckled, joking that Rodrigo seemed destined to remain cannon fodder forever. Determined to prove them wrong, Rodrigo worked tirelessly to climb out of the novice ranks. But during one monster battle, despite his determination, Rodrigo faced a creature too powerful for him. He bravely confronted it, but was quickly overwhelmed and left severely injured. In the aftermath, Rodrigo found himself in a lab, surrounded by doctors assessing his extensive injuries: a shattered mandible, 8 broken ribs, pierced heart and liver, and damaged kidneys. The medical equipment on him hinted at advanced abyssal technology, capable of using magic crystals to extract and transplant cells from abyssal creatures into human bodies. One doctor, noting Rodrigo's DNA similarity to monsters, delivered both good and bad news. He could survive thanks to the abyssal technology, but at the cost of no longer being fully human. Rodrigo had become a hybrid, part human and part monster. The doctor's laughter sounded bitter as he revealed this startling truth to Rodrigo. Following his recovery, Rodrigo was escorted to the chamber of the Lionheart clan's leader. Standing before the formidable leader, Rodrigo was informed that he had proven himself worthy of becoming an official member. The leader handed Rodrigo a badge, symbolizing his new status within the clan, but also made it clear that Rodrigo was now an auxiliary and servant to the leader. Grateful yet puzzled, Rodrigo asked about his teammates. To his dismay, the leader revealed that he had disposed of Rodrigo's entire team, deeming them useless. Shocked and betrayed by this revelation, Rodrigo struggled to comprehend the harsh reality. With a cold demeanor, the leader explained that in this world, the weak were destined to be swallowed up unless they could prove their worth. They would be treated as disposable, mere trash to be discarded. In that crucial moment, Rodrigo's memories flooded back, snapping him back to consciousness. With a surge of determination, he unleashed his full power. His defense, speed, and destructive capabilities surged far beyond their previous limits. Grasping Ye Qing's hand, Rodrigo delivered a devastating blow that sent Ye Qing reeling backward. Rodrigo's body, enhanced by transplanted monster organs and fueled by absorbed magic crystals, tapped into unprecedented power. The pure magic crystals were especially potent under the Blood Moon's influence, synergizing perfectly with Rodrigo's transformation. Consuming the crystals, Rodrigo's strength skyrocketed, surpassing even the dungeon's boss level. The system recognized his transformation, now marking him as a boss monster rather than a mere human. With a loud roar, Rodrigo faced Ye Qing, mocking him for the path to power, giving up humanity to become a ruthless monster. He launched into an attack, hurling huge boulders at Ye Qing. Though Ye Qing tried to dodge quickly, Rodrigo's monstrous shape made it harder to avoid getting hit. Zhou Tong acknowledged Ye Qing's strength but doubted if he could match Rodrigo's sheer power. Rodrigo's punches were potentially lethal to Ye Qing. Rodrigo proclaimed that in the world of strength, the weak bow down to the strong, a harsh truth that drove him to embrace his monstrous form for power. Intent on avenging the failed mission for the magic crystals, Rodrigo targeted Zhou Tong, gripping his neck tightly. Just as Rodrigo prepared to strike, he felt a presence behind him. Turning around, He faced Ye Qing, who had powered up again by drinking another potion to restore his strength. Unable to see through Rodrigo's defenses with his observing eye skill, Ye Qing relied on his Blood Nightmare's abilities to uncover hidden insights from Rodrigo's body. Ye Qing explained that while the Berserker's skills had temporarily boosted his own strength, the toll was severe, a 30-second exhaustion period. In contrast, Rodrigo's transformation blurred the line between human and monster, extending his reach even into the dungeon itself, with the abyss demanding its due from him. Rodrigo chuckled at Ye Qing's remark, insisting that his newfound power was his own achievement, unrelated to the abyss. However, at that very moment, the repercussions of tapping into dungeon energies began to manifest on Rodrigo's body. His right hand morphed grotesquely, losing its human appearance and transforming into a more monstrous form. Rodrigo, realizing what was happening, grew furious that Ye Qing's warning seemed to be coming true. In his rage, Rodrigo lunged at Ye Qing. Yet, as his body became larger and more monstrous, his agility suffered greatly. Ye Qing easily evaded Rodrigo's clumsy attacks. During the battle, Ye Qing wished he had a weapon. Suddenly, Zhou Tong shouted and threw his dagger to Ye Qing. Ye Qing caught it skillfully, now armed and prepared to seriously hurt Rodrigo. Ye Qing swiftly maneuvered behind Rodrigo, slashing his back with the dagger and dealing significant damage. Each strike was a critical hit, surprising Rodrigo. Ye Qing taunted Rodrigo, mocking his inability to keep up with someone he considered trash, despite Rodrigo's enhanced agility. Rodrigo, enraged by Ye Qing's words, warned that humiliating him would only lead to a worse fate for Ye Qing. He asserted his superiority over Ye Qing, claiming a higher existence. However, Ye Qing disagreed, seeing Rodrigo merely as a human-turned monster who had borrowed power to become stronger. Over time, Rodrigo's transformation progressed, losing more of his human form and becoming increasingly monstrous. Ye Qing observed this irreversible change, realizing Rodrigo was now fully consumed by his monstrous nature. At that moment, Ye Qing taunted Rodrigo by mentioning the abyss calling him, which only fueled Rodrigo's growing rage and monstrous transformation. He screamed in fury, haunted by memories of being treated poorly and desperate to prove his worth. Meanwhile, a message appeared before Ye Qing, presenting a challenge: defeat Rodrigo without killing him to earn a rare reward. Ye Qing hesitated, knowing it would be hard to subdue Rodrigo without causing harm, especially with Rodrigo's teammates likely to intervene. But, attracted and curious by the promise of the rare reward, Ye Qing decided to accept the challenge and face the difficult task ahead. Ye Qing thought to himself that Rodrigo, in his current state, had no chance of making it out alive. He believed that even Rodrigo's own teammates wouldn't let him go so easily if they saw him like this. As these thoughts crossed Ye Qing's mind, the blood nightmare emerged from his body. In that brief moment, it reminded Ye Qing to remember its words, urging him to find a way to get Rodrigo's attention. The blood nightmare assured him that 5 seconds would be enough for it to take action and strike Rodrigo. Ye Qing, however, immediately dismissed the idea. Without hesitation, he told the blood nightmare that killing Rodrigo wasn't necessary. The blood nightmare, along with Zhou Tong, was taken aback by Ye Qing's response. Ye Qing then calmly explained that monsters belonged in the abyss, and monsters could not leave the abyss. Those like Rodrigo, who had abandoned their humanity and descended into the abyss, would be welcomed by it with open arms. This, Ye Qing said, was the natural law of the abyss. He went on to remark that during the blood moon, it was believed that monsters would enter a berserk state, but in truth, it was not the monsters that surrendered to madness, it was the people. As Ye Qing spoke, Rodrigo lost all control over his mind, his consciousness consumed by the abyss. Fully transformed into a monster of the abyss, Rodrigo fled the scene, vanishing into the shadows. Elsewhere, Chen was assessing the situation he found himself in. The chaos surrounding him was undeniable, but he convinced himself that if he could survive the abyss, great fortunes awaited him. His confidence soared as he stumbled upon a treasure chest overflowing with riches. In that moment, he believed his time had finally come to claim his share of fortune. The sight of the treasure before him felt like the key to freedom, new equipment, and a fresh identity. As Chen reveled in his newfound luck, unaware of the danger lurking behind him, Rodrigo, now a monstrous shell of his former self, silently approached. Oblivious to the threat, Chen fixated on the treasure, envisioning how it would change his fate. Before he could act on his dreams, Rodrigo struck from behind, ending Chen's life in an instant. Moments later, Ye Qing and Zhou Tong found themselves outside the abyss, sitting in a bar. Zhou Tong bowed his head toward Ye Qing, his expression filled with sincerity. Lowering his gaze, he asked for permission to address Ye Qing as his boss, vowing to follow him from that moment forward. Hearing Zhou Tong's request, Ye Qing looked troubled. He hesitated, explaining that he couldn't accept such a responsibility. Despite his reluctance, Zhou Tong pressed on, revealing that ever since he had heard Ye Qing declare his lifelong ambition to become a king, he had been determined to follow him for the rest of his life. Ye Qing's discomfort grew as he tried to explain that his earlier words had been nothing more than an attempt to appear impressive. Reflecting on it now, he admitted that he had simply been speaking nonsense at the time. However, Zhou Tong refused to accept this, dismissing Ye Qing's attempts to downplay his influence. He insisted that it was only through Ye Qing's encouragement that he had been able to discover his own worth and the goals he now strived to achieve. Ye Qing, after hearing Zhou Tong's words, asked him about his future plans. Zhou Tong responded without hesitation, reminding Ye Qing that he had once told him he was the best support Ye Qing could find. This caught Ye Qing off guard, prompting him to ask when he had ever said such a thing. Zhou Tong, his face filled with determination, declared that his goal was to become the king of supports. Ye Qing couldn't help but reflect on Zhou Tong's stats, with agility at 2 and luck at 1, and marveled at how Zhou Tong still managed to hold his own on the battlefield despite such low numbers. As much as Zhou Tong's spirit impressed him, Ye Qing knew that encouraging him to continue fighting on the front lines would only put him in danger. As Ye Qing mulled over how best to handle Zhou Tong's enthusiasm, Zhou Tong spoke up, his expression bright and cheerful. He painted a picture of Ye Qing charging the front lines while Zhou Tong stayed behind to strengthen him from the rear, insisting that together they would be an unstoppable force. Before Zhou Tong could continue, Ye Qing cut him off, calmly advising against any further expeditions into the abyss. Zhou Tong's smile faded as surprise washed over him. He asked Ye Qing what he meant, clearly taken aback by the unexpected suggestion. Ye Qing glanced at Zhou Tong, whose expression grew troubled after hearing his words. As Ye Qing observed him, he reflected on the reality of Zhou Tong's abilities. While Zhou Tong could strengthen others, his own weakness left him vulnerable and in need of constant protection. In Ye Qing's eyes, this did not align with the image of a true support. Apologizing silently, Ye Qing knew he could not allow Zhou Tong to keep risking his life. Seeking another way to satisfy him, Ye Qing reached into his belongings and handed Zhou Tong a pouch containing 1,000 magic crystals. As he placed the crystals in Zhou Tong's hands, Ye Qing explained that it was everything he had. He assured Zhou Tong that this amount would sustain him for a long time and, with a firm tone, asked him to promise never to set foot in the abyss again. Though disappointment flickered in Zhou Tong's eyes, he nodded in understanding. Despite his reluctance, he acknowledged that Ye Qing's words were spoken out of concern for his well-being and accepted the truth behind them. As Zhou Tong spoke, his expression shifted. Despite Ye Qing's words and the generous gift of magic crystals, Zhou Tong firmly declared that he could not accept living a comfortable life as nothing more than trash. No matter how much wealth he was given, he could not stand the thought of being looked down upon. Even if venturing into the abyss meant risking his life, he was determined to continue. Ye Qing studied Zhou Tong's face, and a faint smile crossed his lips. There was a sincerity in Zhou Tong's expression that was hard to refuse. His resolve was clear, and Ye Qing could see that nothing he said would easily change Zhou Tong's mind. After a brief pause, Ye Qing spoke, asking Zhou Tong how he could hope to protect others if he could not protect himself. Zhou Tong hesitated, unable to find an answer. Without another word, Ye Qing reached into his inventory and retrieved a sword. He reminded Zhou Tong that his microphone only occupied one hand, leaving the other free. Holding the sword out to him, Ye Qing explained that it was Lao Li's sword. He added that, based on what he knew about bards, their role combined both magic and physical abilities. Ye Qing's tone was calm but firm as he handed the weapon over, silently urging Zhou Tong to find strength not just in words, but in action. Ye Qing continued, explaining that Zhou Tong could wield magic weapons to cast the strengthening and weakening spells he excelled at, while also learning to master certain attack spells. He told Zhou Tong that if he had been unable to swing a sword for Lao Li before, now was the time to make the effort. This, Ye Qing added, was a favor Zhou Tong owed to Lao Li. Hearing Ye Qing's words, Zhou Tong placed his hands on the sword. In that moment, he admitted that he did not actually need the magic crystals Ye Qing had given him. Ye Qing smiled at the response and suggested that if Zhou Tong didn't need them, he should give the crystals to the families of Lao Li and Lao Zhu. He reassured Zhou Tong that the two of them would have plenty of opportunities to earn more in the future. With a determined expression, Zhou Tong agreed without hesitation. Moments later, at the entrance to the abyss, 3 unfamiliar figures stood silently, gazing into the darkness beyond. At that moment, a woman spoke to the 2 others standing with her. She explained that after the Blood Red Moon incident, squads of S-ranked job changers had been dispatched to eliminate the monsters within the abyss. She went on to say that deep within the abyss, they had found 8 bodies, all identified as members of Blood Oath. Rodrigo, the leader, had succumbed to abyssal corruption and transformed into a monster before being dealt with. Continuing, she mentioned the discovery of additional bodies, one of which had been identified. The man beside her inquired about the identity of the deceased, prompting the woman to reveal that the body belonged to someone frequently accused of being a team killer during previous abyssal invasions, Chen Xingdian. As she finished speaking, the man took the report and scanned its contents. According to the document, high-quality equipment had been found near the location of Chen's body. The report suggested that Chen had likely encountered the mutated corpse of Rodrigo and died in the ensuing battle. The man read through the reports carefully before speaking. He remarked to the others that while this was an unexpected development, it still fell within the scope of their calculations. He then turned to the woman and asked if this was the only anomaly. She confirmed that Chen was the sole factor. The second man stepped forward, questioning whether their plan had ultimately failed. The seated man dismissed the concern, stating that Rodrigo had been insignificant and had failed to prove his worth. He reassured them that if necessary, they could always find others like Rodrigo to replace him. In the next scene, at Shenfeng People's Hospital, a patient sat outside his room, visibly distressed. Apologizing softly to his child, he whispered that he had no other choice and would have to go through with it once again. In his hand, he held a mysterious key. As he activated the key, dark black matter began to seep out, swirling around him before spreading across the city. Chaos erupted as the black matter consumed the surroundings, sending people into a frenzy of panic. The substance twisted and shattered everything in its path, leaving destruction in its wake as the city descended into disorder. As the people fled in panic, an abyssal gate suddenly materialized in the center of the city. Shock rippled through the crowd as they stared at the ominous portal. Someone shouted for the others to contact the officials immediately, but it was already too late. Monsters began pouring out of the gate, unleashing chaos and destruction. Amid the turmoil, 2 siblings ran hand in hand, weaving through the streets in desperate escape. The older brother urged his younger sister to keep moving and not to look back, his voice steady despite the fear gripping him. Suddenly, a monster lashed out with a powerful strike, and in that instant, the older brother, Ye Qing, accidentally let go of his sister's hand. Time seemed to slow as the creature charged toward her. Its jaws opened wide, and before Ye Qing could react, the monster engulfed his sister whole. Ye Qing's heart pounded as he reached out, calling her name with a voice filled with anguish. His outstretched hand trembled, desperate to pull her back. But just as he reached for her, Ye Qing jolted awake. His chest heaved with labored breaths as he sat in the darkness of his room. Beads of sweat rolled down his face. Lying back on his bed, Ye Qing stared at the ceiling, waiting for his racing heart to calm. As the weight of the recurring nightmare pressed down on him once more, he whispered to himself, exhausted and worn. He was tired of reliving the same dream over and over again. Ye Qing glanced at his phone and suddenly remembered something he had nearly forgotten. He muttered to himself that he almost missed what he was supposed to do that day. A short time later, Ye Qing found himself in the flower shop. He called out to the florist, "Miss Zhang, greeting her with a smile and asking for the usual flowers he always requested. Upon seeing Ye Qing, Zhang asked if he had come to visit his younger sister, little Yi. Ye Qing appeared slightly troubled as he replied that he had an unfortunate incident. There, Zhang, hearing this, reassured him, telling Ye Qing that his sister was fortunate to have such a caring brother. Shifting the topic, Zhang then asked Ye Qing if he had gotten a new haircut, complimenting him on how well it suited him. Ye Qing explained that on his way there, he had been stopped by Mr. Military Buff, who mentioned he had learned a new technique for cutting hair. Mr. Military Buff had insisted on trying it on Ye Qing's hair, and despite Ye Qing's initial refusal, he eventually ended up getting the haircut. Changing the subject, Ye Qing mentioned he would help Zhang set out the flowers she always placed outside. Zhang thanked him for the kind offer. A short time later, Zhang mentioned to Ye Qing that she had seen a lot of vehicles heading toward the hospital, many of which appeared to belong to job changers. She asked if something was happening. Hearing this, Ye Qing immediately became worried about what might be occurring near the hospital. Without hesitation, he rushed toward the hospital to investigate. Upon arriving, Ye Qing was shocked to see an abyssal gate standing right in front of him. One of the officials in charge of securing the area ordered the subordinates to set up speed barricades. Ye Qing, still in disbelief, wondered what an abyssal gate was doing in the middle of the city. Approaching one of the officials who was monitoring the situation, Ye Qing was about to ask questions when the official noticed him and quickly spoke. He warned Ye Qing that citizens were to stay back due to the ongoing lockdown in the area. However, as the official finished speaking, a sudden chill ran through his body. He immediately stepped aside, allowing Ye Qing to pass through and enter the abyssal gate without further obstruction. At that moment, another official arrived and asked the first why he had allowed a random person, Ye Qing, to pass. The first official, however, quickly told the second not to ask him anything. He added that Ye Qing, along with the others who had come earlier, were people they should not mess with. Hearing this, the second official became visibly panicked and immediately agreed with the first. Ye Qing, as he entered the abyssal gate, quietly told himself that his little sister should wait for him, as he would not fail this time. With that thought, he stepped into the gate. Upon entering, Ye Qing realized that this was a form of abyssification. The hospital had been transported to another dimension, and the space now seemed far larger than anything the hospital could have contained, much like the shopping mall incident before. As Ye Qing observed his surroundings, he noted that the room had been cleared out, which he assumed was the work of the squad that had been there before him. Ye Qing also saw signs that the squad who had come before him were well equipped. On the ground, he spotted a special bottle, something no ordinary job changers could easily afford, confirming that they had access to resources beyond the norm. At that moment, Ye Qing activated his skill on the bottle and instructed it to bring back the effective magic contents. Instantly, the contents that had been emptied reappeared, and the system informed Ye Qing that the bottle was an effective magic bottle, capable of restoring 85% of magic power, removing fatigue, and having consumption for the next 30 seconds. Ye Qing then thought to himself that even if he were to take on the abyss alone and search for little Zhou and his sister, the magic consumption would be intense. He reminded himself to be well prepared. A short time later, Ye Qing activated his scouting vision skill, which allowed him to see much more clearly in the dark. As he moved forward, he came across a particular area where the system gave him a hint. It told him that there were two paths ahead, both leading to a point of no return. Ye Qing understood that he would have to choose a one-way path. Ye Qing then observed the marks on the floor in that area and realized that the previous squad had left them behind. The marks appeared to be recent, so Ye Qing assumed that the squad had entered the labyrinth for a rescue mission. Deciding to increase the chances of rescuing his sister, Ye Qing resolved to take the opposite path of the one the first squad had chosen. Ye Qing told himself that he wasn't sure how much time he would spend inside the labyrinth. He added that the worst-case scenario was having to search the entire place alone. While he wasn't happy with the situation, he knew there was no time to waste. An average person wouldn't survive long in an abyss like this, so he needed to hurry and find his sister before anything bad happened. Ye Qing started running down the uncharted path, noticing a brand new red carpet on the floor, confirming that this area had not been explored yet. As he ran, he realized that the path behind him had been consumed by darkness, forming a barrier that prevented him from turning back. Summoning a prop, Ye Qing reminded himself that he had seen its capabilities before. If someone were trapped in a maze, they could mark the area on a map. Holding the prop, known as the Eye of Argos, Ye Qing commanded the system to open the map of the area. The system, however, responded to Ye Qing's command by telling him that it was unable to show the map outside of this area. Ye Qing, upon hearing that, realized that it was no surprise others used blades to carve marks instead. In the Abyss Maze, the system's directional guidance was completely ineffective, leading Ye Qing to conclude that this was likely the so-called Abyss of Rule. As he continued forward, Ye Qing found himself face to face with an unknown creature. He became alert, wondering if he had stumbled into a trap room. However, he dismissed the thought, as he hadn't heard any mechanisms in motion. As he examined the surroundings, he grew confused by the eerie silence in the room, which seemed abnormal. Just as he was pondering this, a monster appeared from behind and launched a surprise attack. Fortunately, Ye Qing's quick reflexes allowed him to dodge the monster's strike before it could land. Stepping back a little further to avoid the attack, Ye Qing immediately countered, launching a strike of his own. His blade cut through the monster's body, splitting it in half. However, the system then announced that Ye Qing's attack had been ineffective. To his surprise, the monster's body began reattaching itself. Ye Qing, witnessing the monster's ability to regenerate, immediately realized that it had physical immunity. However, as he was processing this, the monster let out a deafening roar that caused Ye Qing's ears to bleed. Despite his efforts to cover his ears, the roar was too powerful and overwhelming. In that moment, Ye Qing realized that he could no longer rely on his hearing, and his perception would be significantly reduced. He thought to himself that he had underestimated the dangers of the abyss and concluded that he was facing a monster of rule. As Ye Qing reflected on this, memories from 3 years ago resurfaced. He remembered encountering a similar monster back then. During that time, he had been on the ground, panicked, staring at what seemed to be the figures of monsters. However, there was no light, so he couldn't see clearly. Upon closer inspection, he realized that the figures were just statues. Relieved, Ye Qing realized that he hadn't been facing real monsters after all, but statues he had mistaken for threats. As Ye Qing continued his work, picking up magic crystals, he reminded himself not to waste even a single one. However, as he focused on his task, the supposed statues suddenly began to move. Ye Qing, noticing this, felt a surge of fear and questioned whether his initial assumption about the statues was wrong. He had thought they were simply piles of stones, but it seemed they were much more than that. Just as he was about to turn and flee, one of the scavengers rushed over, urgently telling Ye Qing not to look away from the monsters. The scavenger instructed him to keep his eyes on the statues and not blink, explaining that these creatures were known as weeping stone statues. Ye Qing, perplexed, wondered what a weeping stone statue was, and the mere mention of the name sent a chill down his spine. The scavenger repeated the warning, emphasizing that Ye Qing must only focus on the statues and not look anywhere else. The man then explained to Ye Qing that the monsters in the abyss followed certain rules and logic, and the higher the level of a monster, the more complex its logic. He added that the weeping stone statues in front of Ye Qing were S-class creatures, which typically didn't attack job changers. However, he warned that the rule with these creatures was that if a person were to look away from them, their body would be petrified and transformed into a statue, with the monsters locking onto that person. If the person shifted their gaze, the statues would rush toward them at a speed capable of killing most job changers instantly. Ye Qing, understanding the gravity of the situation, asked the man what they should do next. The man advised Ye Qing to follow his lead and slowly back away without blinking until they were out of the room. Ye Qing agreed and they began to move cautiously. However, as they were backing away, Ye Qing suddenly stumbled over a few rocks in his path and fell, breaking his gaze from the monsters. The moment his gaze shifted, the monsters immediately charged at them. But before they could reach the two of them, the man reacted swiftly, closing the door to the room just in time, trapping the monsters inside and preventing them from advancing. Ye Qing sat on the ground, still in shock from the situation that had just unfolded. After a few moments, he let out a deep breath. At that moment, The man spoke, telling Ye Qing that he had been lucky this time. He explained that if Ye Qing had tried to attack the weeping stone statues like other job changers, not only would he have caused no damage, but he would have been instantly killed. As the man said this, he gave Ye Qing a smile and added that, although the two of them were just scavengers with little fighting ability, their experience was not any less than that of other job changers. Back in the present, Ye Qing, remembering the encounter, had a shift in expression. He quickly activated his fire magic, Great Flame Explosion, and charged toward the monster. As he moved, Ye Qing thought to himself that if the monster had physical immunity, perhaps magic would be its weakness. With that in mind, he began to charge up his attack. However, just as he was about to release it, Ye Qing suddenly lost control of his magic. Realizing this, he felt a surge of frustration, knowing that his fire control had failed him when he needed it most. It was a shame, he thought, that fire magic was the only attack he had fully mastered, yet in this crucial moment, he couldn't control it properly. As the monster relentlessly attacked Ye Qing, he skillfully dodged its strikes while thinking to himself. He realized that the whereabouts of the boat were still unknown, and there was no way he could remain in the first room without making progress. Ye Qing also noted that while the monster had physical immunity, its attacks were primarily physical, making this combination of rules seem strange to him. Amidst these thoughts, Ye Qing came to a conclusion. He would be able to successfully fend off the monster. That's all for today. Thanks for watching.